Welcome everyone. Parshas Matos. Matos Masai. No Parsha this week in America, not in Israel. So I want to talk about. The story about the war that Moshe sends the Jewish people out to fight on Hashem's commandment at the beginning of the Parsha. After we learn about the laws of Nedarim. Actually, I'm just going to change my chair. Was I making too much noise? Excuse me. Much better. Okay, so I want to talk about the War of Midian. So remember, in last week's Parsha, we have Midian who does a terrible act of seducing the Jews and causing the plague and causing them to do idolatry. And now in past parsha, it says that if we had the tzur, we could inflict whatever negativity on the Midianites. But in this week's parsha, there's a command to Moshe, which says, "Nikom nikmas b'nei Yisrael mes Midyanim." Go and revenge the revenge for the Jewish people against the Midianites. Now is a commandment to go and fight a war. Before was maybe to inflict whatever kind of pains on them, but now there's a commandment to fight a war. But the language is to go and to take nakama. Nakama is revenge. It's very serious. So this commandment is very powerful. A commandment of not just going fight the war. Oh, I don't want to do it, but I have to. This is revenge. Simply put, between Jews, you can't take any revenge. It's forbidden. But here, these are the enemies, and revenge is okay. Revenge is a mitzvah, commanded. Understand? And then it says in the pasuk, and afterwards, after the war, after the war, Moshe, you're going to die. The sages tell us that the whole war and Moshe's deaths are interconnected. If Moshe would have delayed this war, he would have stayed alive. Could have delayed the war, dragged his feet, month, 2 months, year, 2 years, 10 years. It actually says, the famous Chazal, it says that Yehoshua dragged his feet in the war against the Canaanites when he came in, because he knew that he would die once he finished. And Hashem saw that, and he died 10 years earlier, it says. Now, again, to be clear, Yeshua didn't consciously say, I'm going to drag this out so he can live longer, but it's kind of scary when a person says, go do this, and as soon as you're done, you're going to die. Hashem told Moshe, as soon as you finish, you're going to die. Same thing with Yeshua. So Yoshua, to whatever subconscious level, withheld doing it faster because he recognized the conclusion. And Moshe did the opposite. He was Mizares, he was fast, he got the people, he said, go, go. And then when it says the people found out that Moshe's death was dependent, they didn't want to go, they were dragging their feet. Moshe said, no, go, 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 do it. So, but we have to understand, why is the death of Moshe depend on this? A lot of things could have been. Why is specifically revenge against the Midianites the thing that Moshe's life will culminate with, that until that happens, he doesn't die? That's one point we get to. Now, so he commands them to go to Nikom Nikmas Bnei Yisrael. Hashem says to tell Moshe to tell the Jewish people to avenge the Jewish people against the Midianites, and then he'll die. Now Moshe then goes and says to Jewish people to go and to get your people together, and the text says, "Latet," to give nikmas Hashem b'Midian. All the commentaries say Moshe changed the words. I talked about this before. I'm going to add a little bit to it this year, but Moshe changed the words. Hashem said to avenge the revenge of the Jewish people, and Moshe said to give the revenge of Hashem in Midian. Interesting. Okay. Now he sent them, and he sent Pinchas to lead them. Pinchas started the mitzvah. He killed the Midianite and stopped the plague. And now he's finishing the mitzvah. And also, Pinchas was the Kohen Meshuach Milchama. There was a Kohen that went out into war. That was Pinchas. It was very suited for him, as we talked about last week, about also from Yosef, a certain quality of fighting the wars before the time. Pinchas, there was a Kohen that leads them, and Pinchas went out with he didn't fight the war because of the Kohen, but he went out with the vessels, with the ark. Okay, Pinchas goes out with the leaders and with the people, and it's not the whole nation. It's only 12,000. And that even says that Bilam, when he saw them coming, he tried to weaken the Jews and say, hey, you couldn't beat us with 600,000, you're going to beat us with 12,000. But they went out with 12,000 tzaddikim, righteous people, and they won. They won the war, and they killed the kings of Midian. They killed Bilam. And that says in verse 9, it says they Vayishbu b'nei Yisrael es neshei Midian es tapam. They went and they took as captives the women and children. Okay, they brought back to Moshe. And now Moshe and Elazar go out to greet the people, and Moshe yells at the heads of the army. And he says, what? You let the women live? They were the ones who made us sin. So Hashem said to avenge the Jewish people, which means to go and to get whatever it is they have to do to fix up what they did wrong. And these women were the ones that actually did it. It says that they recognized them as, oh, that's the one that had the thing with Yankel Shmerel and caused it. They recognized them. You let them live? They're the ones who did the terrible thing. How could you let them live? That's a good question. What were they thinking? What was Moshe thinking? Did Moshe not command them that? What were they thinking? And what's strange to me is here, and this is a little bit hard. He says he yells at the leaders, and Rashi says because everything's dependent on the leaders. You're in charge, and the leaders have to take responsibility. But it's funny, he didn't yell at Pinchas. We don't see he yelled at Pinchas. Pinchas was the one he sent out. He was the real leader. Strange. Why didn't he yell at Pinchas? Okay. So Moshe says you gotta kill the women that have had relations with men already. They're old enough, and fine. And then Moshe tells them some laws about their objects, their clothes that became impure in the war. And then something very strange happens in Pasuk Kaf Aleph in verse 21. It says Elazar now tells them a law. Elazar pipes up and he says, Zos chukas Torah shetziva Hashem es Moshe. This is the law that Hashem said to Moshe. Well, Elazar, why are you saying the law Hashem said to Moshe, not Moshe? And you're saying in front of Moshe, which is strange. Rashi says something that is very fascinating. Rashi seems to say, according to Gemara, that Moshe got angry at them, they didn't kill the women, and he forgot the halacha. Elazar had to pipe up and say the halacha. What halacha was he telling them? The halacha of Guali Nochrim, the halacha of the vessels they gathered in, the pots and the pans, that had non-kosher absorptions, that be koshered. And we learn out, sages learn out also the law of Tvilas Kalim, even a vessel was owned by a Midianite or non-Jew, we'll see, has to be dipped in a mikveh when you take it in your possession, has to be elevated. So these laws, Moshe forgot according to Rashi because he got angry. Now, there's a few problems with that. I mean, Rashi is quoting a Gemara, but Rashi says the Gemara a little differently. The Gemara says whoever gets angry, if he's wise, he'll forget his wisdom. And if he's a prophet, he'll forget his prophecy. And it brings this case of Moshe to show a case of a wise person forgetting. But it's a little strange because the Chasam Sofer asked the question, I don't say Moshe forgot. How can you say he forgot an entire section of the Torah? Chazal said, no, he forgot one point, and also said that one point, but then if he said one point, the commentary there, so then let him say that one point. What do you mean Moshe forgot a whole section of koshering vessels, right? That's what you learn in you want to become a rabbi. It's the first thing. You're a day, you learn how to kosher vessels. You tell me Moshe forgot the whole thing? Angry and he forgot the whole thing. And if he got angry, he forgot the whole thing. Well, how did Elazar know it? Where did Elazar know it from? So the Musa Techa asks a question. Musa Techa says, "How could Elazar know it? This is the only first time we see it." We, and again, I don't think this kasha is so strong. It's so strong because it could be that this is really the new generation. Moshe could have taught it, but the Torah hadn't recorded it yet. But it's interesting that Elazar is the one to say it now. Like, where did he get it from? He got it from Moshe. When did we see Moshe? And when do we see that Elazar is told by Moshe to say the law? Let's say Moshe didn't remember the law right now. Okay, let's say that's he didn't remember, like Rashi, that he didn't remember the whole thing. If that's what Rashi means, I'm not sure what Rashi means. But let's say that. So, but we didn't see Moshe commanding Elazar to go and say it. It's okay. So tomorrow Moshe will say it. There's a halacha. You're not allowed to paskin a halacha in front of your rebbe. How does Elazar go in front of Moshe and teach this halacha to the people when Moshe's there? Now he says, this is the law that Hashem told Moshe. Okay. So that kind of connects it to Moshe, but like, I don't know, it's so simple that Elazar should have said this, could have said, had a right to say this, and Moshe forgot the whole halacha, the halacha of koshering vessels, that he forgot. That's seems to be strange. In the commentaries asked that is that really what Rashi means? Is that what the Gemara means? Could it possibly be? All right, those are the questions I wanna get into. All right, so we want to take things here from some different commentaries, the Chas V'Sofer, the Techa. I want to add a couple ideas and try to say a very unique point. Why was the death of Moshe integrally connected with the law of killing the Midianites through revenge? That's what we started with. That needs to be understood, because revenge is a dangerous process. Anger is a dangerous process. And Chazal say that Kol HaKohes, ever gets angry, like he worships idols, literally. That's what it says. The act of getting angry is an act of worshiping idols. Why? When the Rambam talks about the golden middle ground in your traits, you should always in your midos be balanced. Don't be too stingy, don't be a spendthrift, be balanced. The two cases where he says that there is no middle, you can't just avoid this, is haughtiness and anger. Anger, he says, you got to avoid at all costs. Yeah, it's fascinating because the Rambam himself says in the same discussion, he says, that but a person should not be lifeless, like I don't care. So you got to care about what's right. You can't be, doesn't mean not to be angry, doesn't mean to be lifeless. So what is the problem of anger? If the Rambam is saying a person has to be caring and not care whatever people say and doing it, so then isn't there a middle ground for anger too? And yet the Rambam says no, there's anger you got to stay away from. So what is anger? The sages are so against it, and Torah is so against it. And why is Moshe's death now connected with an act of apparent anger? Didn't say, listen, I don't want to kill the Midianites. I feel terrible. I feel really bad about this. I got to do it. It's just Nikom Nikmas, go and avenge. So there are commentaries that say, as far as some other people say, a very interesting thing. We want to expand it a little bit. That the reason why Moshe's death is connected to this act of revenge against Midian was to fix up what he had not perfected yet. Because we spoke about last week, when the story happens with Zimri and Cosby, So Moshe does not avenge and kill Zimri and Cosby. Pinchas does it. Moshe doesn't do it. So we discussed a little bit why he didn't do it, and we gave a reason. He said one reason, according to the Meshiloch, that he understood deeper intentions of Cosby and of Zimri, but still, it's considered some kind of shortcoming. So therefore, they wanted to say the reason why Moshe now has to do this act of vengeance is to go and to fix up what he had not completed earlier. That's what some of the commentaries say. Beautiful. I want to extrapolate that, go a little bit maybe deeper, because we know Moshe has one sin that we really can't, we can barely figure it out. All right, in Parshas Chukas, Moshe hits the rock, and there's so many explanations what he did wrong, and he's supposed to talk to it and hit it, and he got angry, and he said, "You morim, you people who decide the laws yourself, and you teach your teachers, and this and that." And there's so many commentaries of trying to figure out what Moshe did wrong. So the Ramban and others say that what he did wrong is he got angry, and because he got angry, he came to a mistake. Whatever it was. Whenever it was a mistake, it's very hard to figure out exactly, but whatever it was, but it was because of anger. So based on that, I'd like to say, take the idea of this Sforno and expand it a little bit. This maybe is intrinsic to Moshe's mission because that was the one potential flaw, was anger. And this I've seen in other Sfarim, Chassidish Sfarim. Moshe is not only going to fix his own problem, but he's going to fix the trickiness and the challenge of anger in the world altogether. He's going to be angry for the right reasons. And that's why the Moshe's death is connected, because this job has got to be done by the greatest of the great. Happens to be good that he has to maybe fix up a little bit of himself. But this has to be done by the greatest of the great. Moshe has to go and make a tikkun, fix up the issue of anger in the world, that it is done properly, and he as the leader that is compared to the entire nation is going to fix up anger before he leaves this world. Okay, so that's the first part we want to say. Now, but that doesn't really help us because it seems to get worse. Because if his job was to fix up anger and he sent them to go and to do it, but later he gets angry when they don't do the job. So now we can understand a little bit what this whole switch that Moshe said when Hashem said, "Nikom, avenge nikmas b'nei Yisrael, avenge the Jewish people." Moshe switches it to avenge for Hashem. And we can understand this. This is very, very, very deep. I'll explain this idea. Why does a person get angry? And why is getting angry like worshiping idols? What does that mean? We get angry because somebody blocks my will. I have something I want to do, and they're stopping me. And it gets me angry. But like if you're on, let's say, a boat, and you don't know anything about sailing, and the captain, sails this way. You don't get angry because I don't know. He's the one who's driving the boat. I don't know. Wherever he says to go, it's where I go. I don't determine it. I'm not gonna get angry because it's not up to me. He's the captain of the boat. Or let's give another example. Let's say a person decides to do something. They decide to go jogging, they go running, and their ankles hurt from this workout. The ankles don't get angry at the person, at the mind for deciding to go jogging, because the ankles are part of the body and subservient to the whole body. So what is anger? Anger is the place where we separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We separate from Hashem. We have our own will. My will is not Hashem's will. And therefore, if you block my will, who's blocking your will? It's this guy, that guy? No, it's not. It's ultimately, again, there are bad players in the world, but ultimately Hashem is running every aspect of life and every aspect of the world. And therefore, if this is happening, this is what he wants to happen. What are you getting angry about? He's directing it. How do you get angry? Oh, you get angry because you're a little separate from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that really is the first statement of the Nachash, the serpent. Isim Kelokim, you'll be like God. Not I come from God, I'm going to God, I'm with God. I'm like God. Like Hashem means a certain place. That's why there's a danger there. There's a mitzvah to be like Hashem. You know, I heard Lopiat say once beautifully, he says, if a person says, I am like my a father, I have his genes, I'm like my rabbi because I learn his Torah and I try to speak, then the like is because I'm emulating and I'm an extension of them. But when I say I'm like my rabbi because I don't need him, I'm just as good, so that's a break. When I'm like Hashem because I'm imitating his ways because I am an extension of Hakadosh Baruch Hu in the world, and that's all I am, that's all I can be, and I want to emulate that. That's being like Hashem. But when the Snach, which the serpent says to be like Hashem, means you could be a separate entity, and that's why that Yetzer Hara of anger and haughtiness is so bad, and that's why the sages tell us in the end. It says the famous Gemara when the Yetzer Hara is shechted. So, you know, there's a famous thing. It says there, Hashem shechts the Yetzer Hara at the end of time. But it says shecht. So when you shecht, then you make it kosher. So are you killing the Yetzer Hara or are you making kosher? The answer is both. There's one Yetzer Hara you're making kosher. That's the Yetzer Hara for desire. And that's what the sages tell us, that desire will not be lost in the world. Desire will be turned into Chamida D'Oraisa, will be a yearning to learn Torah, spirituality. Desire is good. Just got to direct it in the right place, both in this world and you must Mashiach and weiter. You have to direct your yearnings, your desire for something right, but desire is very good. The second Yetzer Hara, which is called the Yetzer Hara Kasi, anger, haughtiness, idolatry, that is a separation from Hashem. There's no place for that. There's no place for that. And that's what's going to be killed. Because once you think you're separate, then you're separate and you have your own thing. I get angry because I'm separate. And that's why Moshe changes it. Hashem says, avenge the revenge for the Jewish people. Because Hakadosh Baruch Hu, in the relationship of love to us, puts us first. That we say, you know, there's no one like Hashem, and he says, Mikamcha, who's like the Jewish people. That's why it goes back and forth. That's the relationship. So what happens here is that Hashem said to avenge the Jewish people, and Moshe changed it because he said the bottom line is if you don't realize that you are avenging Hashem, then you have your own agenda. The Jewish people, and you want and you feel that you were insulted, and you feel that you were hurt, and these women they were bad to you, but if it's not the nikmas Hashem, it's not the vengeance of Hashem, then you're separating, and you might have your own reasons why you want to take it out on somebody. The same reason if you have, let's say, you know, a lot of times people get angry with someone, they think they're being very religious about it. You know, well, they didn't really, they're not doing the mitzvahs right, and I'm really angry. Okay, maybe, but most likely you're angry for some other personal reason. That's what it is. So you could hide it behind the religiosity, but the reality is that is it nikmas Hashem? Okay, so Moshe changes it for that reason. And that could be what the Mefarshim say, why the Jewish people made the mistake. Because in a regular war, so there's no reason to kill the women because they're not fighting the war. And in a regular war, in Milchemes Rishus, in a war that's when we call out to peace. If they don't want peace, then we fight. But we don't, there's no reason to kill the women there because the war is over. So the Pekudei Chayil, the people, the leaders of the army, they felt that, okay, it's Nikmas Hashem, and I don't want to put my own agenda into it. The normal thing is to go and to not to kill the women, even though it's a personal assault on us, but we're just doing what Hashem said. We're just doing the normal system of a war that Hashem commanded. And that was their rationale. So then why did Moshe get upset? Because he said, don't you understand? It's a two-way street. When Hashem and the Jewish people are married in that way, and therefore, when you're hurt, it's not just your hurt. It means Akash Baruch Hu is defending because because his love for the Jewish people. As it says, whoever attacks is an enemy of the Jewish people, is an enemy of Hashem. That's the way it is. So yes, Moshe understood that even though he told them to avenge for Hashem, they would understand that includes their own disgrace. So Hashem cares about their disgrace. And therefore, these are the women that did this, made you do the sin. Of course, Hashem wants you to avenge against them. But they didn't. That was their mistake. Now, why did he not yell at Pinchas? So it could be like this. Maybe we could say the following. Moshe, originally, as we saw, one of the problems that Moshe had to get to fight this war, according to some of the commentaries, commentators, was because he wasn't the avenger in the very beginning. But Pinchas was. So Pinchas is really coming from a whole different perspective. He's really coming from the perspective of, I am only doing this for Hashem. Because look, I'm definitely the avenger. Pinchas was. And Pinchas, therefore, his rationale was the same as the other leaders, because from his perspective, I'm doing this completely for Hashem, even if it's going to be an embarrassment for us, it doesn't matter, because I never had a problem avenging. I'm just doing what I have to do right now. So that could be why Moshe didn't yell at Pinchas, because Pinchas really was, was part of the leadership, but he was clearly the avenger, because he already had successfully started this process, and he had the same understanding as the leaders. Now, that's very nice. So we've explained quite a bit in terms of that, but we come back to this part that's so bizarre here, that Moshe then gets angry. The whole point was to remove the anger, to fix up anger, and then he gets angry that they didn't do it. And according to, it seems, the verses, he then forgot the commandment, the mitzvah of Gil Nochim, of getting rid of the absorptions in the non-Jewish vessels. So what do we gain? We didn't gain anything. We seem to have lost the whole thing. So I saw the Musi Tach, he brings some, I forgot where the Sefer he bought it from. Pinchas, I forgot which one it was exactly, but he brings an incredible perush here, a very beautiful idea. It says like this. It says that when Bilam wanted to go and curse the Jews, Bilam's expertise, because he had one eye just to look at bad, and his expertise was to know the moment Hashem gets angry, and he would curse. And the Gemara says there's a moment, a rega, whatever that is, moment, that Hashem's sort of anger is in the world. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anger like we know. It means there's a judgment, because the world was supposed to be built on judgment. And therefore, there is that reality in the world. It's not anger, it's what it has to be. It has to be that since you have to earn it, you're not earning it, there is a second that quality of Hashem creating the world with judgment is still in the world. Moshe Shapiro explains it, Satzal explains it in this way, so that one in the storm. That anger is that moment of the world was created with judgment. You need to earn it. But Hashem built in the rachamim, the compassion, so we would succeed. but it doesn't has to be in the world. Now it's pure, but it's a moment of, are you making it? Are we living up to our expectations? Now, when Bilam, it says, wanted to curse the Jews, he was waiting for that split second where that reality is still in the world, and Bilam was waiting for that split second, but it didn't come. The whole time, and it says, look, and that's what the Mepharshim learns. Look, and the Pasuk says the whole time that when you were Bilam wanted to curse you, but he couldn't. Why couldn't he? So because Hashem didn't get angry the whole time you were in the desert. Bilam's waiting for that moment. The moment didn't come. Now, when the moment doesn't come of this type of anger, even though it's righteous anger, or we'll call it din, we'll call it mishpat, judgment. So the whole world has it kind of easy, because it represents that there's less of a demand of, are you living up to your expectations? And he even explains that that's one of the reasons the tribes were yelling at Pinchas, because Pinchas, remember, he got vengeful for Hashem, and they said, well, we don't see the holy anger in the world at all, so he must have done it because his own self. And the answer was no. He did it even though there was not anger in the world. There was no moment even in the world, but Pinchas mustered that up for himself. So what happened now? So according to that idea, when Moshe saw that they didn't kill the women, he recognized that there wasn't within the Jewish people right now that sense. Let me just explain a little bit what I mean more, because I don't know if it's so clear. There are different dynamics of how we function. When there's something called, the din, the expectations, the requirements, what you're supposed to do, that's a certain accountability in the world. When that is less, then the world shifts to another dimension. Like what Dessler explains, we talked about it before, that Abraham was chesed, all kindness. Now, what happens if you're all kindness? Then it's great, it's beautiful, but then the negative people start to feel that, well, there's no accountability. Yeah, Abraham loves us, whatever we do. He's giving us free food, even though we're this, we're that. So on one hand, it brings a tremendous blessing to the world. On the other hand, it could have a danger to flip the system. And that's why he explains Yitzchak had to come in with the trait of accountability of din. So the fact that Hashem was not removed the moment of anger in the world, that shifted the dynamic, and there wasn't anger. And therefore, Moshe understood when they came back and they didn't kill the women, it was because they weren't motivated by real nakama or real anger, because it wasn't in the world. So what did Moshe have to do? He had to actually fix up anger and pretend on the outside to be angry in order to have them wake up to what they have to do. And that's exactly what he did. And this answers all the questions. He really did fix up anger, because he wasn't really angry. He was totally in line with Hashem's ratzon, but he knew that they had to feel it. And so he said, you saved the women who caused the sin. And when he brought that into the world, there was a moment where they realized, wait a minute, maybe we did the wrong thing. Now, that explains also why Elazar says the law. And this is the way to explain the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't mean that Moshe forgot the whole thing. It doesn't mean the Gemara it says whoever gets angry forgets the law. We learn that from Moshe. It doesn't have to mean that Moshe got angry, forgot the law because of that. It means that in general, when you get angry for the wrong reasons, you're going to forget. And where do we see who was the one that taught us this lesson? Moshe. But not because he was really angry, because he had to teach us the lesson. Moshe, just like he gave his life to fix up anger, he gave up this teaching. He passed it to Elazar to teach us this lesson.
And look at this incredible, and that explains why Elazar said it in Moshe's name. How could he? Because the Musa Techla explains that really Moshe was signaling and gearing and speaking, like so to speak, through Elazar. That's why when he said, these are what Moshe taught, it was that he was literally, Moshe was projecting this teaching to come through Elazar, to show if a person yells and screams that no, Moshe did it the right way, even though he did it, just to have us realize that there's a moment you got to stand up. But to teach us that lesson, he himself passed over and let Elazar teach this for him. Now, what did Elazar teach? He taught the laws of Gulei Nochrim. Incredible. He taught the law that even a slight absorption, even though there's no mamashis, there's nothing there, it's going to make the vessel impure and not kosher. Even if it was, you had to dip it and it was owned by someone else, there's something there, you can't even find it, you can't see it, you got to dip it and get it out. There's even an opinion in the Gemara that says that the vessels of the Midianites, there's a discussion in the Gemara about, if absorptions were good taste, not good tasting, but there's an opinion in the Gemara, it says, no, they were bad tasting. They already went bad, and even one day will go bad, even within a day, it gives bad taste. But a special law that was by this law of Midian, which is not applicable to other cases, but that even anything inside of it, even if it was non-kosher, even if it tasted bad, was going to be a problem. What a lesson. What a lesson. It was exactly the lesson Moshe had to teach. When you have a little bit of ourselves that we are disconnecting from Hashem, that little tiny bit, you can't even taste it. It's an absorption. What is it? I'm a person. I have my own feelings. It's normal. But once we have that in the end is going to lead us to the problems. Because a little bit of a break from Hashem, whatever little bit of break from Hashem we have, and we have a separation, that is the sin of Adam and Chava in the very beginning. And that's what Moshe fixed up right now. And so the lesson now that Moshe took for the team again was he gave his life up to fix up anger. Why? Because anger represents the place where a person separates from Hashem, even in the smallest place. And now when he came to rebuke them, he wasn't even really angry himself, but he did it for Hashem and for the lesson he had to teach the people. And to teach them that lesson, he sent the message through Elazar. And what was the message? The message was even a little bit of an absorption that you can't really see, you can't really feel, has no mamash, has no existence there. If it gets into the system, it's going to ruin it. And there's no place you see that more than in the world of anger and haughtiness. And that was originally Moshe's statement. Nikom nikmas Hashem, go and avenge for Hashem. Yes, of course, Hashem wants for the Jewish people too. But how do you get there? Do you get there because I have my own agenda and it may line up with Hashem's agenda? Or do we get there because we really realize that everything we are, all of our will, and all of that we are going to do is as a shliach, as a messenger, as an extension, as a reflection of Hashem in the world. And therefore, that's what it says. If you nullify your will to Hashem, he'll nullify his will to you. What does that mean? It means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to us that what is your will? Do you have a separate will from me? Nullifying your will to Hashem means that you recognize that every single thing that's happening is not separate. This is Hashem's will, which in the deepest place is really our will.